In just a little bit, we're now joined by Paul Mills of the NCAA Tournament bound Oral Roberts basketball team. You're doing it again. When was the last time somebody ran the table during a conference schedule and then won the postseason tournament? How often does that happen?
Well, it is rare. We are the only team this year to go undefeated in our conference of the 32 conferences, so it's rare. But in the 41-year history of the Summit League, Scott was a part of it when he was at Valparaiso. It's been done twice, and we did it this year, but South Dakota State actually did it a year ago as well. So it's been done two times just in the 41-year history. It just happens to be in back-to-back years.
Paul, for you and your coaching staff, I know like rosters change. I know you've got some guys that were there a couple years ago when you made your great run in the tournament. But for just you as a coach in this institution, how much does that help navigate what's ahead for you guys in the next couple weeks?
Definitely helps. I mean, we have 4 of our top 6 from the Sweet 16 team in 2021. 3 of those guys are starters. We're starters on that team, and we've been able to add pieces. We have a young man who transferred to us from Kansas, and Bill Self coached at ORU, and he told me, he said, Paul, I did not want to lose him, and he turned out to be an all-conference player. We have a 7'5" young man from Arkansas, and he's played in the SEC, and so I have a 2-time All-American at the point guard spot, Max Aceman. So I have really talented players who are experienced, and that's kind of what allows you to win 30 games in a season.
You guys dominated, and then you win it, but you're in a league, and unfortunately there are some that no matter how good you are, how dominant, if you get 30 wins or not, you have to win the tournament too. Can you try to describe that tension, or I know everyone has pressure, but what's that like knowing that?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's never been a 29-win team that didn't make the tournament. So if we would have lost in the championship game, we would have been the first team to ever win 29 games and not make it. But I'm on speed dial with Joe Lunardi. Hey, where are we? Well, tell me what you think. And he's great. He just gives me his opinion. But I'll give you an example. Yesterday we were up 31. We were up 51-20 at the half. And you would have thought we were down 10 because that is the tension. You realize if you don't carry this out and you don't play well for the next 20 minutes, you could possibly find yourself on the wrong side of Selection Sunday. And I've been on that side. It's not a fun feeling. And I also know the feeling of waking up Sunday morning, knowing it's Selection Sunday, anticipating where are we going in what I consider the greatest event in sports.
Coach, I can't recall where I saw this. It was just yesterday, though. Somebody wrote about how it seems like 10, 15 years ago in the tournament that there wasn't as much of a need to have to win the conference tournament for teams that were really good mid-majors, outside. And now, as to your point, to Smokey's comment, you kind of have to no matter how many games you won. Do you think that's something that everybody kind of needs to reanalyze, is the sort of line that the smaller schools have to meet to even get themselves in the tournament versus maybe the way it was a few years ago?
Yeah, I could go off on this, just having been at this level, now for 6 years. But we played the 5th toughest non-conference schedule in the country. So it wasn't as if we were ducking people. It isn't as if our 30 wins are against bad teams. And by the same token, when you go out and you play a schedule and you have a net ranking in the 30s, that's how the NCAA quantifies teams. And if hey man, you know what? Y'all are in the 30s. I don't think you should penalize people because they're poor and reward people because they're rich because they get more opportunities. We're one of 7 schools, Baylor being another one, in the country that do not have a quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 loss. And so if you're like, man, y'all have won every game outside of some quad 1 opportunities, but we only had 4 of them. So should you penalize us because we don't get the same number of opportunities that rich schools do? So is that how we want to move as a society and penalize poor people and reward rich? And you know what? The answer may be yes. but I do think that people need to take a long look at that, because the reality is that we've beaten teams in the NCAA tournament. I mean, we've won games as at ORU to advance to the Sweet 16. So, in my opinion, I think you have to look at this stuff, and instead of taking, hey, we're going to take, I don't know, I mean, what does the Big Ten have? 14 teams. We're going to take the 10th team out of this league. How do you compare that relatively to us? And I don't know that you can say, well, they have this many wins against this level of competition, when the reality is they had way more chances because of the league that they're in.
Coach, and it's also not, I think people maybe don't completely understand scheduling. It's not like, okay, you guys said, okay, we have 4 of those this year. Let's get to 7 next year. That you can just call 3 more schools and they'll be like, oh, yeah, sure. Come on to our place and beat us.
Yeah, it's not really how it works. I mean, I look at what Alabama pays teams to go play them in football. And I said, you'd have to, I mean, if you know you're going to go in there and take that loss, you're going to have to pay me 7 figures, right, to go in there. And so teams have to go get games. And if they're going to spend money on games to fill their schedule, I promise you they're not paying schools that they think is going to be a competitive game. They're trying to work through kinks, get lineups and rotations correct. So they're trying to get questions answered through live competition. So they're not trying to do it against, for us, a player who is a 2-time All-American. They would rather do it against somebody else. And, I appreciate the opportunity that other schools have extended to us to come play them. But, even if we were the worst team in the country and Scott said, man, would you play us for our opener just so we can see where we're at? He wouldn't play me just because of the relationship. So I get it. I understand how schools go about scheduling, but when you're on this side of it, it's a little bit more difficult.
If you have success the way you've had it, not if you've had success. You had the team, what was it, a couple of years ago that made the great run. Yeah. Should that not, for example, there are probably there's going to be a team or 2 this weekend on Sunday that's going to get in, their resume is iffy, but they have a name. So why shouldn't Oral Roberts, if you have steady success and you start to show you can do this over and over again, get that kind of a lean too? Yeah, no,
I agree 100% with you. I think you have to evaluate opportunities. And again, I don't know that I personally wouldn't want to go down a road to where, that person doesn't get the same number of opportunities. And because of that we're not going to extend them an NCAA tournament invite, because right now I can name you 4 teams in the top 30 of the net who do not have a true road win in the Quad 1 all year. And so, and if I named them, you would be like, really? They're high-level programs. Playing road games is hard. And so for poor schools who have to go on the road in order to play Quad 1, they have to play true road games. And, I can't name Baylor's schedule off the top of my head, but I don't think Baylor played a true road game in the non-conference. I know they played Virginia and UCLA on a neutral court in Vegas, but I don't remember them playing on somebody else's court. Maybe there was a home and home that I forget, but it's really, really rare for schools to do it. And you know what? There's a reason teams don't have true road wins against Quad 1s, is because they don't even go play them until they get to conference. And then, you know what? It's hard to win on the road.
Yeah. Well, Paul's going to bring up one that Scott's not going to be real thrilled we had to bring it up.
They did play Marquette. They did play Marquette.
That's right. And you know what? Listen, Marquette is really good, right? And I remember I saw the score, and you know what? Scott and I talked like 2 days later, now that you say that. That is the first time that he had to take Keontae into that environment. So you could tell a talented freshman whatever you want. If they've never been in a road environment, it is difficult. And you can try to explain it, and I'm just, I remember the 2012 year, we started off that year 17-0. And our toughest game was at BYU. And BYU was okay that year. But we were really good. And I just remember, man, this is hard to do, to go on a road to win. And if it's your first time, we were fortunate to have a little bit of experience with that group, and Quincy Acey and Pierre Jackson, guys who've been around. But if for Keontae, I mean, that's his very, very first time. And you don't want to go in there without everyday John either, because you need as much help as you can get.
You have a young man, and you brought him up earlier with Max, who's averaging in his career over 20 points a game. How good is he?
He's terrific. 2 years ago when we were in the NCAA, he led the country in scoring. He was number one, and we've been able to bring in some people alongside of him to help him kind of ease his burden. And I just told him, I don't know that you'll lead the country in scoring. And he said, will my assists go up? I said, absolutely. He said, that's what I want to do. He's not worried about individual accolades. I mean, he's been a two-time AP All-American. He's such a phenomenal young man. He's about the right things. But, I mean, I think when you get that many accolades and you're known as a scorer and you get asked to dial it back for the benefit of the team and you're all in on that, that's what I enjoy seeing, watching the confetti fall last night and guys holding up the trophy and cutting down nets and watching it all come to fruition. And there has to be trust on both ends. As I tell our guys all the time, we are mutually coaching each other. I know you think I'm coaching you, but you are coaching me. And there is this give-take in this work together trying to get to the same endpoint. And he has dialed back some of his abilities from a scoring standpoint in order to help the team from a passing standpoint.
So do you know what seed you'll be? Do you kind of get slotted in because of who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, I talked to Joe Lenardi this morning. He's kind of the expert, and my guess is we're at 12. I think we could probably get to an 11, so then you would play a 6. I was talking, it's where 12 will end up playing a 5. Scott, when did we talk? Sunday? Yeah, we talked Sunday night. And he was like, don't, mess it up and go to a 13 or a 14 or, get to a 15 seed and just barely beat people because I don't want to play you. And, yeah. And I said, we'll try. We're trying to win as much as we can, bro. And, Jerome told me the same thing. So hopefully those guys, I think they'll both be in the top 4. They'll be in the top 16. We'll see how it gets slated. Aldo comes Sunday, but hopefully I don't have to see them or deal with them. Well, they're not even in the same region.
Well, I know you watched when they played in Waco earlier this year. I think by the time they got to Manhattan, things were a little bit different, so the first wave of emotions was gone. But was that gut-wrenching for you to watch?
You know what? I talked to both of them. I think I asked Jerome, I said, tell me what it felt like. And for him, I think he said it was bittersweet. One, because he knew how hampered they were injury-wise, and he just knew that they didn't have a full deck. And at that time, they had lost some games in a row. And he's, for Scott, I mean, that's not a fun feeling to add misery onto somebody's Saturday. If you don't have a game on Monday, I'm just telling you, those Saturday losses are awful. Because I don't know how football coaches do it. I couldn't sit with a week for a loss. Great thing about basketball is you're going to play 2 or 3 days later, and you can get this taste out your mouth. And so Jerome just felt so bad because he knew he was adding misery to a team that was already won and lost a few, but at the same time was suffering injuries. And they didn't have, their full deck of guys. And then they started to rattle them off. So the second time, I said, how'd you feel? He said, I didn't care about that when they had their whole group. So I think that from where they were and just where their relationship, it's just so close. But at the end of the day, everybody has a responsibility to your players, and you're going to get them prepared as best as possible. I don't enjoy watching them play each other, but I get it.
Yeah. Well, for years, everybody would ask Coach Drew, why didn't you schedule a game with Bryce? Why didn't you schedule a game with Bryce?
No.
Yeah. If it's that hard for him with Jerome or with you or with Coach Driscoll or Grant or anybody, how much harder would it be with his actual flesh and blood? No, I think people should totally get it. right now?
I need the money. I was begging Jerome to play, and Jerome was like, "No way." And so no, it is. It's really hard. And in fact, I may be stepping over my boundaries here, but we had a game with Vanderbilt when Bryce was there, and Scott was like, what do I have to come out of my own pocket personally in order to not play this game? Because it was previously scheduled with Kevin Stallings. And when Bryce took over, he was like, I'm not doing it. So I think if there was ever any money that had to get paid in order not to play, I think Scott would have came out of his own individual pocket because he was not going to play a game against Bryce.
Paul, you were on staff, right, with Scott. I know you were when they played Syracuse. I don't know if it was once or twice or how many times. Jim Boeheim is no longer the head coach at Syracuse. I know he had the great run. You could kind of see this coming. Anything you remember, the zone, which you guys did a great job with? Anything in particular about Boeheim you want to share?
Well, I'll tell you, when we made that trip, Damon Carter, who's now on staff, Tweety was a freshman. And we went up there, and at that time we flew commercial, so we'd drive up to DFW. But all our luggage got lost. And so we go up there, and we are an hour before tip-off. Syracuse has given us their road uniforms, and they've given us practice gear. I think there are pictures of us practicing in Syracuse practice gear. And we don't have our uniforms. And we're about to play in their whatever their opposite color is, and they were playing in their white, so we may have been in orange. And about 30 minutes before tip-off, one of our managers had flown on a separate flight. It brought up a separate gear, and we were able to get in ours. But I remember just how generous they were. 47 years. I mean, Scott's now been at Baylor for 20. And you're like, wow, 20 years. They on 47. That is absolutely incredible. When we were all together in the Sweet 16 in 2021, we were all in the bubble. So, I'm always seeing Scott walk the hallway. You see everybody there, and Syracuse was there. And so just to walk around another Hall of Famer, there's already Hall of Famers running through there, but just to sit with Scott and listen to Coach Boeheim talk, and because there was a lot of camaraderie that went on during that environment. He's just such a class act. I know he kind of puts up a hard demeanor, but I'm telling you, behind closed doors, that is as nice a man that you will ever meet.
Good to hear that. Paul, congratulations. Good luck moving forward. We'll be rooting for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Paul Mills, Oral Roberts men's basketball coach. They ran the table, won the tournament. They're going to be